Hey everyone, the idea of this video is simple. Is it worth getting a Wii U to play Xenoblade Chronicles X? Yeah, the console that made Nintendo sweat buckets. Right now it is not worth talking about why it failed in the way it did, but it is worth mentioning that the Wii U exclusive games are quite numbered, because many have been ported to modern consoles, and just to put it into perspective, that is a list of games considered to be the best ones in the system. However, for this video, I just want to focus on perhaps the best RPG the Wii U has to offer. A video game that apparently has no plans to be ported because it has been almost 9 years and well, nothing has happened. And just to put some numbers on the table, with a really basic search on internet I found Wii U's between $130 up to $330 and Xenoblade Chronicles from $35 up to $100. So for this review I just want to focus on the negative sides of this game, because if you ask me, I will give this game a solid 9.2. However, despite being a great game, there are things worth considering while looking at it. And just to give a brief piece of the story, where I am giving it a 10 because I consider that these kind of stories are part of the classic JRPG approaches, with humanity not even facing, but escaping out of Earth, as there is a huge war going on, and humans have no way to defend themselves. So years before, they pretty much packed what they considered to be the key to save humanity in another region. Things were not as simple as they sounded, because many died in the process, and in this tale we follow the White Whale, a ship that survived the last moments of Earth, wandering in space for a safe place to begin a colonization. Unfortunately, one of these alien races had plans to exterminate every single human being, despite their location. In this confrontation, the White Whale took heavy damage, having no more options than having to land on planet Mira, a world like Earth. Since then, 2 months have passed, where several expeditions have been carried out, where Elma found a solitary survivor who happens to know how to fight. Once finding this silent character, both return to New LA, the city where humanity will face many hardships, because they need to map out the planet, find resources, defend themselves from other species, and find the lost core that is sustaining human life. Now I bring the story up because there are people that say that the pace was not good, or things like the silent character is just bland, and let's properly face it, the main protagonist of this story is Elma. The avatar is just another character that helps her to achieve a particular objective. So based on that, I can get why some people wanted to take the MC spot, but in all honesty I never felt that it was a must. And regarding the pace of the story, it comes down to its gameplay, rather than its pace. I'll explain the part of the gameplay in a bit. The thing is that when you put the story together for what it is presented, if there is something that felt really bad, is that the cliffhanger at the end of the game is so good to make more stories that I fail to see why this particular tale hasn't been continued. Maybe as a writer, the only fear could come down to mess up the next entry, but for the general quality of these stories, I don't think that is the case. However, I don't think there is reason to not say that it was an amazing story. The pace of the story, in my humble opinion, comes down to its gameplay, because the open world presented here is so big, along with many mechanics, that is where you can feel a bit lost. And to keep advancing on the story, you need to fill some requirements that fall into exploration or progress some characters' stories. For example, one of the main tasks is to install probes wherever you can, and at some point the game asks to have a survey rate of 10% of the first area. Here, in all honesty, I messed up one of the basic skills between mechanic, archaeology, and biology, and instead of choosing mechanical, I chose archaeological. The thing is that the mechanical level has a direct impact on probes installation, which is the easiest way to increase the survey rate. So because of that mistake, I had to spend somewhere around 10 hours beating some other enemies, going into other areas to increase my blade level, to then increase the mechanical level. Now, while at first I was a bit annoyed, I didn't mind, because that gave me the chance to face some other enemies, make more money and stuff like that. Then again, verifying that this one is an open world, so if you expect to be pointed into one direction or what you need to exactly do, this game is not going to be for you. If I have a complaint, it's that the game can be overwhelming, due to the amount of things that you can do. So you are going to mess it up several times, unless you decide to use a guide the whole way. Now, just throwing a huge world for the sake of throwing it is not the best of ideas. Personally, I don't mind the subquests in pretty much any game. I mind them when you are going back and forth. I accept that they can give immersion to the general state of affairs, but if you want my suggestion, the only subquests worth doing are the ones that involve other characters, like Elma, Link, Do, and so on, because you face some interesting enemies along the way, and get to know the other characters that otherwise you know they are there, but that's pretty much everything. Something that can be a bit confusing is the general progression, because sure, almost at the beginning you are told that depending on the size of the enemy, is how difficult the fight is going to be. So I was going here and there fighting random enemies just to check if I was able to fight them or not, and if the enemy was somewhere around at the size of a boss and 10 levels above my usual team, I had decent chances. But the moment you get that nice cinematic to use skills and jump into big fights, it can be really annoying, because they run out of fuel quite fast if you use them in constant combat, and the amount of materials you can get at that point in the game is just not great. Plus, you have a finite number of times where you can get wrecked before you get charged for damages. So the first skill you get is just meh, throw it away, and try to get a level 30. With that, the level 30 don't get overboard, and don't even trigger fights against big enemies, because several times you are going to get one shot. Maybe some other annoying things came down to the correct use of probes, and the frontier nap to get big tickets of money and materials. Materials are not a must if you don't plan to play so long, because they are used for a few quests, field the skills, which is better if you bind big enemies, so you save all the materials and develop new weapons and stuff like that. The thing with the new weapons and upgrades is that they ask for a lot of monster materials, that I decided to simply brute force my way through the story and farm common items along the way. What is important to learn, if you want to do some things a bit easier, is to pile a lot of money, because the skills and their equipment is kinda expensive. Oh, and avoid like the skills. I felt they were squishy, so in a summarized way, this one comes down to what I explained at the beginning of this section. It's an open world. It wants you to explore and learn things in a kind of a slow way. When it comes down to graphics, in all honesty, I have no particular issues. Just once the game closes, and maybe some funny issues with textures and their load time. You are going to see things appear and disappear quite often. So let's just skip to the music, which can be a big deal in this game. The music in a video game is a big deal, because I am sure you don't want to hear screeching loud sounds, just to put an example. Now, when I heard the OST of this game, I felt that I was going back to the early 2000s, because I heard the Common Combat track and I was like, is that Linkin Park? Or is that a mushroom that got infected? I like metal music, but for a good number of people out there, that is just noise, and among metalheads, is a never-ending topic of discussion between different genres. So when I heard something like new metal, I was like, well, that is definitely a bold move. I am not going to deny that I like them, but for the general audience it's way easier to digest the classic JRPG approach, which consists of an orchestral arrangement and metal, simple and beautiful. You can hear that in Etron Odyssey, Xenoblade Chronicles, Tales of Arise, Demon Gaze, Octopath Traveler, Trails of Cold Steel, just to name some games. And to put the cherry on top, they use lyrics, vocals, which is another interesting move, plus they also throw some electronic that I have no idea what it is. And you have no idea how much I hated to initiate fights on skills. So in this case the OST can be quite the deal if you expect something like the other Xenoblades. This one is not going to hit in the same spot, which can be a pretty big deal. However, if you like the music in early 2000s, you have nothing to worry about. With that, I don't regret owning that piece of toaster since like 10 years ago, and Xenoblade Chronicles X is a really good game. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.